Welcome to Skilled Nation, the podcast where careers are welded, wired, and worked into reality. I'm your host, Jimmy Rhodes, and today we're handing the mic over to the people actually doing the work. This is episode 3, Voices from the Field, A Day in the Life. We're stepping onto job sites, into workshops, and behind the scenes with tradespeople who are living the life every day. You'll hear what's in their toolbox, what a typical day actually looks like, and what they really want people to understand about the work they do. These are the voices that don't always get the spotlight, but you know what? They should. Because when you talk to the people in the field, you get a clear picture of just how powerful these careers can be. Whether you're ready to get on the path or just getting curious, this episode brings the environment to life and shows what it means to love what you do. So let's get into it. All right, today we're so excited to welcome Mark Plowman, Executive Director of Diving Instructions at Commercial Divers International, or CDI. So, Mark, diving. How did you start on this path?
Oh, well, that's a kind of a long story. Diving's something I've always been interested in ever since I was a little kid. I was about 11 years old, and I saw something on TV one time, and it was underwater archaeology. And I asked my parents, they were both in the Navy at the time. They weren't divers. They were scuba diving and stuff like that from when they were younger. But they went and found a place in Virginia Beach where I was living at when I was that age. And they found a place that got me certified for doing open water scuba diving. And next thing you know, my dad and mom would drop me off places, and I'd scuba dive different places, different states on vacations. And then as I started getting older, gotten into high school, and everybody always asked that famous question all the time: what are you going to do when you grow up? What are you going to do after high school? What are you going to do for a job to make money because you got bills to pay? And I didn't really know the answer. I just knew that I liked being in the water all the time. It's all I ever really thought about. Then trying to research stuff on what to do for a living, and I found out you can't make no money doing underwater archaeology unless you find things. So it sounded like I wasn't going to make no money. So it sounded like a hobby more than it was a career. But then I found out about underwater construction, and there's not very many schools across the country. There's only about 4 of them in the United States that train this kind of stuff. And there was a school not too far from where I was when I was living in Oregon at the time, and I didn't have a lot of money to go to school, didn't have all that kind of stuff. I ended up enrolling into the program and lived in the back of a Suburban for 9 months while I was in dive school because I couldn't afford to pay rent and feed myself and pay school bills and all that kind of stuff. It was kind of one of those things. I knew this is what I wanted to do, and I didn't have any other options to do it. So I just made the sacrifice, made it happen. I wanted to quit many, many times because living in a vehicle is not the funnest thing in the world. But I tell you what, I got through the program, and I haven't looked back since then. I've been doing this ever since.
So you had just this passion for being underwater, and I just got to ask, because that's kind of counterintuitive. You can't breathe water. There's pressure. There's claustrophobia. It's an alien environment. What drew you to being underwater for hours a day?
I'll tell you what. Until you actually go underwater in a good area where you can see good viz and stuff like that, because I tell you right now, all water is not great water to dive in. We're there because we have a job to do most of the time. But when you're down there, especially recreational, and it's a whole different world down there. I mean, it's beautiful. I call it my world when I'm down there, even though it's, everything else is sea creatures' world down there. But I love it down there. I think it's amazing. It's relaxing. It's not everybody gets to go there. I mean, there's a lot of places on this planet that people haven't even been to yet, and it's all under the ocean.
And you say it's your construction site. It's your workplace.
It's my office.
So what have you found, like on a site, that you've been able to maybe keep, or what's the weirdest thing?
I get asked this stuff all the time. Like, what if I found any weird things? If I found anything cool down there? What's the scariest sea creatures that you've found down there? All kinds of stuff. I've found all kinds of things, from sunglasses to tools to motorcycles to vehicles. I even came across, I was doing a dive one time. I found an entire intact Navy minesweeper down there. So it's an old Navy ship that was down there that we didn't even know it was down there, and I came across it. One of my most probably enjoyable things that I have, I was doing a job, the Titanic, right?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't do that one. But I actually got the chance to work on a salvage team to look at a ship. It was a sister ship of the Titanic. So when the Titanic was made, they made 5 sister ships, all the same kind of ships for different purposes. The RMS Republic is the one that I dove off Nantucket Island off the East Coast. It's in about 375 foot of shark infested water.
Okay.
But
Hazard of the job.
It's hazards. If you just tell all the ladies that in the bars, and they love it, But so I was actually one of the first divers that got to go down on this vessel down there. It sank back in 1909, I believe. It actually sank before the Titanic did. And it's said to have the SARS treasure on it. That's what we were there really looking for. So there's a gentleman that owns the salvaging rights to it. He hired us as a dive team to go out there. I was the first diver down there on the vessel itself. I found a couple of wine bottles and some plates and a glass beer Stein mug. And they actually had an archaeologist on the ship with us. So when we bring artifacts out of the water, they have a process. You can't just bring stuff to the surface and just let it dry out. They have a process they have to do. But they actually let me keep the first artifact, which was just a glass mug. Has barnacles on it and all that kind of stuff. And the archaeologist, she sprayed it down with all the clear coats and all that kind of stuff that they do to preserve it. And they presented it to me. So it's actually the 001, the first artifact off of this RMS Republic. So that's kind of a really cool piece for me to have at home. I have it in a little shadow box, stuff like that. So that's probably one of my most, I guess, prized things that I've taken off the bottom of the ocean. But like I said, I see stuff down there all the time.
So maybe that archaeology thing could have panned out after all.
It would have taken me a very long time to make a paycheck, but yes.
I have so many questions. So wait a minute. You said
I have lots of answers.
This sunk before the Titanic, and they still launched the Titanic? What? Maybe that was a tell.
That one was still floating at the time.
All right. Okay. Well, and also you talk about the shark-infested waters. I mean, honestly, what kind of hazards do you have other than the dive itself?
I mean, people talk about... Lots of people have heard about this industry. A lot of people don't know that this is even a real job out there. Everybody sees policemen, they see firefighters, they see welders, they see construction workers in the middle of the street and stuff like that. Commercial diving is just another option, job out there. But like the dangers, everybody always talks about how this is like one of the top 5th most dangerous jobs in the world and all that kind of stuff. And it is a dangerous profession to get into, but nowadays technology has come so far. Mm-hmm. We have so many redundancies, and I hate using the word redundancies when it comes to safety because we need them there for a reason. But diving, it's actually a very safe industry nowadays if you're following the rules. I mean, if you're on top of a roof doing roofing shingles and you're not wearing your fall arrest harness and you slip, you could fall and hurt or end up, dead, whatever. We have a lot of rules and regulations that we need to follow in our industry to make sure that we get to go home at the end of the night. Make sure we get to go home and see our loved ones, our kids, our pets, all that kind of stuff.
So if I were to ask you about a typical day on the job site, I mean, I think a big part of that would be protocol, right?
Well,
safety?
That's a tough question, too, because there is no typical day in the diving industry. Nothing's ever the same. I mean, even if you sit down and we have meetings for months and everything's planned out, blueprints on the table out here, we're talking about it, it's never the same, especially when engineers have blueprints and they're going off blueprints that were made in 1920s or 1960s, and here we are in 2025 diving on stuff that's been repaired or reconstructed over the years, but they don't update blueprints, so nothing's ever the same down there. Plus, everything rusts and deteriorates and falls apart, so things that they think that are down there sometimes aren't even there anymore. But everything changes all the time. So, like I said, there's no typical day, but we know that we're going to get dressed, we're going to do everything safely, and we're going to put divers in the water and make sure everything goes as smooth as possible, and we have to adjust to whatever issues are out there. Weather is probably one of our biggest enemies out there when we're diving. If we got a lot of wind or if a big storm comes in, what's the water conditions? What's the temperatures? We dive in everything, even temperatures wise. If it's freezing cold out, we'll take chainsaws and cut holes in the ice, and we'll use hot water suits and stuff like that to jump into the water to make sure that we can stay comfortable while we're working. Sometimes the water's so warm you're just wearing like coveralls while you're down there. So it just really depends on what it is. So there's no real typical day when it comes to this kind of stuff. You just kind of got to go with the flow for the most part.
Doesn't even sound like there's typical gear.
Well,
because you're talking about doing like what is this guy we have right here?
So this is a diving helmet here. So this is a Kirby Morgan SL27. This is one of my personal hats here that I dive on a lot of jobs. This is how I get to work. So you have a truck driver, right? Truck drivers, they don't get paid to drive. Everybody thinks truck drivers get paid to drive. They don't. They get paid to deliver stuff on the back of the truck, right? Mm-hmm. This is my truck. That's how I get to the job site. I put that on. I have a team that helps me. So without my team, I couldn't do anything. So I'm not the only person that's doing the whole work down there. So divers, we take turns and stuff like that, but that's how we get down to the job site. So whether it's 50 feet in the water or 300 foot in the water or 600 foot, we use our helmets to get down there. Once we get down to the job site, that's where we set up. We have tools just like any job that you'd see here on topside: pipe wrenches, drills, grinders, impact wrenches, chainsaws, whatever you think that you have out there, we use. But then I go down there and just do normal construction work, whether it's underwater burning and underwater welding, or we're salvaging something, whatever it may be.
So it's counterintuitive, because when you think of like heat and all that, and you're down in cold water, you think, how do you weld underwater? But all this equipment is basically adapted for underwater use.
Yeah. So everything, like I said, we have tools, like every tool that you think that you have in your garage, or you see at a mechanic shop, or out in the middle of the road and you see constructors working. We have, so a lot of stuff used to be air driven pneumatic tools. Nowadays, the biggest thing is hydraulic tools. They hit harder, they're stronger, it's continuous, pressure going to it. The tools are a lot more friendlier now, and they're smaller motors and stuff like that. But yeah, we have tools for just about everything that you can think of underwater.
So whatever you could do topside, you could do under. All right.
Sure can.
We're talking to Mark Plowman. He's the director of diving at CDI, which is the Commercial Divers International. This is part of your environment, right?
Yep.
And this thing is heavy. It's how heavy is this thing?
It's probably about 35 pounds.
So how does that impede your movement when you're underwater?
It does. One of the big things, like, we train a lot of people for this. Is what we do. We train young women and men how to do this profession. Getting them comfortable with the equipment, the gear, that's our first hurdle for the most part. Getting them used to putting all this stuff on. It's very heavy. There's a lot of weight when it comes into it. We're wearing, we got dive helmets on. They're wearing bailout bottles, weight belts, extra tools and gears and stuff like that. They got probably close to about 100, 150 pounds of gear on them, going up and down ladders, getting in and out of the water. But I'll tell you what, once you're in the water, I can do front flips, back flips.
Really?
Fly around the water, all kinds of stuff like that.
I don't get it. This feels like it would just sink like a rock.
You would think it would sink like a rock, but I mean, actually, there's positive air inside the hat here, so there's air being pushed into it. Just imagine like a 5-gallon bucket, and you flip it upside down, and you put it in your pool. It's going to have that big air pocket in it, right? And it wants to shoot back to the surface. Same thing with these hats. There's air being pumped down to the hat all the time, and there's a lot of positive pressure in there, so it's trying to float off your head.
All right, you've explained this before, I can tell. and talk about that team that stays on the boat, right? I mean, you got people with you. You never go down alone, I would imagine. And then you have people up top, right?
Absolutely. So most of the time I am in the water by myself.
Okay.
I'm usually down there. I'm solo diving down there, but I have a team all the time. So I'm connected to the surface. What I have is a hose. It's called an umbilical. Just like when you were born, everything that you need to survive is in that umbilical, right? So our hose is called our umbilical because that's what we need to survive in the water. But in that hose, we have lots of stuff. We have air coming down to us all the time, whether it's through a compressor or HP air banks or whatever type of systems they have for supplying the air. But we also have communications. So in this hat here, there's actually speakers and microphones and all that kind of stuff. So they can hear everything that I do. They hear every breath that I take, every time I sneeze, everything I'm talking about. If I'm down there swinging on something and I'm saying bad words, they're hearing on it. And then topside, they can talk to me as well. So I have a whole team, and they all have jobs up there. So the biggest ones, you have your dive supervisor up there, and he's usually running the rack box. The rack box is pretty much what monitors all of my air, all my pressures. He's the one talking through things. And sometimes I might even be on a job where we have video down there. So on top of my hat, I have a screw here, and we'll have a mount.
Okay. Yeah.
And we'll have lights on one side and a video on the other side. So sometimes the team can actually see what I'm working on if the water conditions allow them to see it. So like I said earlier, sometimes we're in waters where I can't even see my hands. And that makes the job a lot harder sometimes. But I have a whole team. So I have tenders. Tenders are usually who make sure that they give me slack and take up slack on my umbilical when I need it. If I need tools, they'll send tools down to me on a working line. I got guys pretty much checking compressors all the time, making sure they're running properly. The dive supervisor is running the rack box and running comms and all that kind of stuff. So like I said, without the team, I mean, you're pretty much helpless down there.
This is a lot to learn. Is there a most important thing you learn, maybe not even just specifically about the work of the diving, but about yourself or about this career? What is your biggest takeaway?
My biggest thing is you got to learn patience, and you have to be able to adapt to situations a lot of the time. Yeah. If you don't have a lot of patience and you can't adapt to the situation that you're at, because it's not always going to be perfect. And like I was talking about earlier, I mean, things change all the time. No matter how well you plan it, we have a big thing in the industry. We say, plan the dive the plan. But that can go south real fast. Yeah. So we have to be able to adapt and overcome. And That's one of the biggest things. And I think by being patient and being open-minded and even taking criticism sometimes, or even listen to other people's, opinions on what they think might be a better situation or a better way to do something, that's going to make you go so much further in this industry than anything else.
Mark Plowman is the director of diving at CDI. And, when you were in high school and you were thinking about what you were going to do and everyone was asking you that question, one of the things you always think about is, what kind of a life is it going to give me? How is it going to provide for me? How's it going to provide for my family? So people listening are going to want to know, what are the prospects? I mean, are you surprised by the amount of money you can make doing this?
The money's great. I mean, you can go out there and you can make amazing money. My biggest thing is I've got to go places and see things and do things that I never thought I would have done in my life. And there's a lot of jobs out there. I mean, even just, like topside welders or pipe fitters and stuff like that. Those guys are traveling across the country. They're getting to go places. Some of these young people have never even left the towns that they grew up in. They've never left the state before. So being able to travel and see things and do things is pretty amazing. It's a big bucket list thing to say that I've been here, and most people have never been and done that stuff. I'm a big fisherman and hunter too. So when I travel the States, I get to do a lot of that stuff when I travel different places. But like I said, the money's great. You can make a lot of money doing this stuff. You have to be a hustler. You got to be wanting to go out there and doing it. And you got to have a good mental game doing this kind of stuff. It's a rough business, but it can be very rewarding. And, when I first told people when I was, 19 years old and I was going to do this for a career, there was a lot of people out there thinking that I wasn't making a very smart decision. Because back then, we're talking 19 years ago or something like that, 20 years ago, we didn't have a lot of the Facebooks and Instagrams and internet like we do today. So a lot of people didn't even know this was a career out there that you could actually make a living off of and support a family. And so I had people thinking that maybe this wasn't the best thing. Maybe I should think about something else. My parents were very supportive of it though. And, they kept me mentally strong to get through it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I called my dad and said, I'm out of here. I'm not doing this no more. And he'd be like, you're almost done. I'm like, you live in a suburban, Dad. So it is a mental game. But I mean, if there's something that you think that you want to do, I say, shoot for the stars. And if you don't touch it, at least you tried, got to go for it, whatever it is that you think you want to do. And the diving industry has been very, very profitable for me and more rewarding just from the experiences that I've gotten and the friends. That's a big thing. I mean, when I was in high school, I had a great time in high school. I loved high school. All my buddies, I thought they were my ride or dies forever. And I got into the diving industry, and I'll tell you what, some of my best friends are in this industry as well. I mean, I'm godfather to some of these guys' kids and stuff like that. We meet up and do vacations together, and it's literally a family now. So the diving industry is. So
it's not just the money. It's the experience.
Like I said.
And gets you out and seeing the world.
Yeah, the money's great, but the experiences, I think, are more rewarding than that.
That's incredible. But to reality check it, right? You said there's some mental strains to this kind of work. What are those?
Yeah, like this job is a very physical job to be on part of it, but in my opinion, I think it's more of a mental game, and you have to be mentally strong to do this. You have to make sure you get up every morning. You got to make sure you have a good attitude every morning. But there's a lot of traveling, and I've raised 3 kids doing this kind of stuff. There's a lot of time on the road. You're away, and sometimes you're in locations where there's no cell service, where you can't make a phone call or FaceTime your kid. You might miss a birthday or an anniversary, a Christmas, Thanksgiving, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, anybody that says they've never been homesick, they're lying to you. You get homesick. I don't care how tough you are. But it's just one of those things. I mean, you enjoy doing what you do, and it's a great career that you can provide things to your family that you wouldn't be able to even if you were at home every night working at a job doing something that was just, mediocre to you.
Well, you talk about some of these builds, and they seem really challenging. The blueprints aren't matching. You're discovering stuff. Is there a particular job that when you drive past it and you look at and you know what's under there that you can't even see, that makes you feel particularly proud when you drive past?
That's one of the big things, like you just said there, you made the key word there, if you can actually see it, or because you can't see it. Most of my jobs, no one gets to see the end result. I'm trying to think if there's a good one out there. I mean, I've been on a lot of really amazing jobs out there. One of the coolest things that I think is awesome is that, so my my little brother does this industry. He's been doing it for about 5-6 years now, so he's a diver. My son, he's been doing this for almost 3 years now. He's a diver. My little brother, who's a diver, his wife's a diver as well, and they just had a newborn baby. So I mean, we got divers in the family now. But there's jobs that I've been on and worked on that like my little brother would go to, and he'd be on the same job doing something else that was being done there. And so it's kind of fun when he sends me, pictures of stuff, and there's a picture of me doing something and then a picture of him doing it, 10 years down the road.
Yeah.
Same
site.
Yeah. He's even been to some of the same hotels that I've stayed in. One of them was down in Kentucky, in Paducah, and I used to stay there so much that I used to have like underwater magazines delivered there. Well, he's there staying at the same hotel 10 years later, and they still get the same magazines with my name on the back of them sitting on the coffee table in the lobby. But there's lots of jobs out there. Just most of them, like I said, you can't see them, and salvage is one of my favorite things to do. So if like things get lost or go missing or they sink, our job is to go find them and either recover stuff or bring it back up. So most of that stuff's not even there anymore. Mm-hmm. The biggest job that everybody knows, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, I'm not sure, but one of my favorite jobs I was ever on was the cruise ship that ran across the shore in Italy back in 2013, I believe it was, 2012 maybe. I might be messed up on the dates there. It kind of all blends together. But that was the biggest salvage job ever to this date right now. It was an entire cruise ship that sank out there, and we were out there. There was a lot of big teams out there, a lot of diving happening out there. But I was in Italy for almost 18 months on and off, salvaging this ship, and we raised the entire ship up and floated it out. So that was a very cool job. That was the Costa Concordia. It's an awesome project if you ever want to YouTube something or watch it. It was a pretty amazing opportunity or project to be a part of.
It sounds amazing. We're talking to Mark Plowman, Director of Diving at Commercial Divers International. And, you talk about going down and you're not quite sure what you're going to see. And so you kind of got to, I imagine, MacGyver some things. Do you have a go-to move that you use again and again that you pull out of the kit?
I don't know if I have a go-to move. Obviously, if we're on a brand new site location, our first thing is the survey stuff. We want to check it out, make sure that the site's safe, make sure that the corrective actions, plans that we have are going to work for what we've been trying to plan for and stuff like that. But yeah, as being a diver, sometimes we're in places where you can't just go down to the hardware store. You can't just Amazon something and have it dropped off. So you need to be able to, hey, this isn't going to work. This tool isn't going to work. We have to make something. And we've done things as far as taking big sockets and cutting them in half and welding longer pipe on them so we can reach certain stuff to get the socket on the bolts because you can't physically get your hands on them. But as far as tools, my dive knives, those, I don't go any dive without my dive knives. I use them for everything. I use them as tools, prying stuff apart, cutting stuff, things like that. But like tool wise, we'll make all kinds of random stuff. Go up top and weld something up to make something work if we have to.
Yeah, you got all the welding gear. You got everything you need to make something.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you ever have a rookie mistake that you wish you had back, or that people won't let you live down?
I don't know if I've had like a big rookie mistake. You always be on a job sometimes where, literally, they had to spend 6 months to have some kind of special hardware or bolts made up, and they just flew these parts in, and you always have somebody that we tell them you can't drop none of these bolts, and one of them always gets dropped. And sometimes it's so deep that we can't go down and recover it sometimes. Not that we can't, it's just that we're not set up to do that kind of stuff for that job. That or you're dropping into something where there's 4 or 5 foot of mud on bottom, and you ain't finding it if you wanted to anyways. But
that's for future archaeology.
For future guys, yep. But as far as mistakes, like I said, most of the time, I can't think of anything that comes off the top of my head as far as that aspect of things. Things happen in the water all the time. Whether you tie a knot and it comes undone, it's one of those wish knots. Hope it holds. Wish it holds. But for the most part, we're talking through everything all the time as we're doing things in the water. Divers talking to the top side's talking to the diver, and especially with new divers too. We want them to succeed, so we want to set them up for success. So we have to talk them through everything, and it might be step by step. Even the redundant things that you wouldn't think you'd have to mention, just talk them through it so they don't make those rookie mistakes. But stuff happens sometimes.
All right, well, Mark, we're at the point where we're going to give you a little bit of lightning round now. You ready?
All right.
I first want to know, what is the tool you're irrationally obsessed with and won't let anyone borrow?
Oh man, tool that I'm obsessed with. Like I said, my dive knives. I don't like to let anybody borrow my dive knives.
And
Either they lose
tell
them.
me what's a dive knife as opposed to a regular
I have a
knife?
couple of them. So Spyderco's, those are my go-to. I usually wear two, just folding. They're 4.5-inch long blades. They fold. I keep two of them on my harness all the time. So I use those all the time, and I don't like to let anybody borrow them because either they lose them, they break them, I don't get them back. They forgot that they left it on their harness and they flew home yesterday, and now I don't have a knife no more. So I have my two Spyderco's, and then I have my Green River, which is a bigger knife that I only use if I know that I'm going to be doing like line work down there. If there's a bunch of line wrapped in a prop or something like that, or there's a bunch of stuff I need to be cutting down there. It's just a longer blade and a really sharp, fast serrated blade, so I can cut through 4-inch line if I have to very quick. So those things I don't technically like to let lend out.
No.
They stay with me all the time.
Don't let anyone touch those. Those are yours. What about your toolbox? If your toolbox had a personality, what would it be and why?
Oh, man. If it had a personality, well, because of my kids, I would say my toolbox would have a personality of the guy on the streets that have their grocery carts that are grumpy all the time, most of the time because they know they're going to take something out of there and it's not coming back to the toolbox.
You're that guy, right?
But I'm pretty much OCD with my toolbox, though. I make sure everything goes back so my kids hear about it.
Very
all the time.
neat, very
if stuff
organized?
doesn't get put back in my toolbox, they hear about it.
All right.
And my son's probably the worst. He'll be working on his dirt bikes or working on his car and all that stuff. It's amazing. He's been out of the house now for 2.5 years, and it's crazy how things are right where I need them when I go find them.
Yeah. Well, you know what? He's stealing your tools, isn't he?
Yeah.
Taking them in his place. All right. What about the next generation? What do you want them to understand about this kind of work? And, what would you say to somebody who's thinking about this path?
The next generation, I mean, this is a big thing. That's why, I have the school. We, my partners and I, we started the school back in 2017, and it's for the next generation. It's because we have passion for this industry, and we want it to be successful, and we want people to have the same mentality that we did when we wanted to start this industry, and we want to try to help it be a little bit smoother than it was back then. So we want to set them up, and I tell them, I said, most of the time, just showing up on time, having a good attitude, you do those two things right there, you're going to have a job for a very long time.
Yeah.
A lot of people can't even show up to work. They'll talk about how they were late, traffic was bad, but then they got a Starbucks in one hand and a bagel in the other and talk about how they were late. Just being professional out there, being professional on the job site, stuff like that. But mostly just your attitude. Keep it going out there and try to set them up for success. I mean, sometimes, places will send people out on jobs, but they don't know what to bring. They don't know what type of, is it cold there in the wintertime? Is it hot there in the wintertime? What's good to be wearing on a boat all the time? Proper footwear, all that kind of stuff. So I just want to set these guys up for success to make sure that they're very successful doing this. If this is something that they want to do for a living.
And training matters.
And
big time.
Training absolutely matters. It starts with the dive school. If we can't teach them the right way at dive school, we're setting them up for failure out there in the industry.
So how can they find out more about Commercial Divers International?
Commercial Divers International. So our main campus is in Goodyear, Arizona. I know it sounds crazy. A dive school in the middle of the desert.
Dive school in the middle of the desert. That makes sense.
If I had a nickel for every time I heard that, I probably would have flown my plane in the parking lot this morning. But there's only like 4 schools like this in the country.
Okay.
We have ours right here in Goodyear. We're also building a new campus up in Lorain, Ohio right now, up on Lake Erie. And we're putting together another campus over on the military base in El Paso, Texas, on Fort Bliss. So now military, or anybody that's in the military, any branch, when they're 180 days out from separating from the military, they can actually do a CSP program or a Skills Bridge program, and they can come to our El Paso location and still, while they're still getting paid by the military, start training as a commercial diver. So when they do separate after that last 6 months, they can go right into the workforce, and there's no gap in between working in the military and then going to a job.
Oh, that is a fantastic program.
But yeah, if anybody's interested in doing this kind of stuff, Dive CDI, that's our website. Lots of information there. They can always call us and stuff like that. And we have students come from all over the country. We have people coming from different countries coming here. We just graduated a student like 2 months ago, and he's living in Germany right now. So it's a very good industry, but if they want to know more, I mean, I would recommend them just going to the website or calling and talking to the admissions people down there, and we can answer any questions or all questions.
Mark Plowman, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Big thanks to Mark from CDI for giving us a look at the real day-to-day life of a tradesperson and reminding us that behind every tool and task is someone with purpose, pride, and a story worth hearing. We're talking about a way of life and a badge of honor. If Mark's journey resonated with you or you're ready to start a journey of your own, head to tws.edu or rsi.edu for more training programs, scholarships, and ways to take that next step. Next time on Skilled Nation, we're turning up the heat. Literally, in episode 4, we dive into the world of welding, where sparks fly, skills matter, and the paycheck is only a part of the reward. You'll meet a former student who went from having no clue what welding even was to building a career that's taken him across industries, state lines, and income brackets. We'll talk about what it takes to get certified, what a day on the job really looks like, and how the demand for welders is exploding across the country. We're talking fire, metal, precision, and the kind of job where your work really stands the test of time. If you're into hands-on work, big results, and the idea of earning what you build, this is the episode for you. Episode 4, Burn Bright, The Welding Life, drops soon. Hit like, follow, subscribe, and don't miss the next episode. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review. And we'll see you next time on Skilled Nation.